Let's hear it again for Old Cool. Well, thank you everybody for coming out for this. We've lost track now of how many years we've been doing these here at the Gates of Heaven, but it's really I think a part of Memorial Day now here in Madison, Wisconsin. A couple of years during COVID, we went to a video version, but it's great to be back here in person again. My name is Norman Stockwell. I'm the publisher of the Progressive magazine, based here in Madison, Wisconsin. If you didn't get a chance to... If you didn't get a chance to grab one as you came in the doorway, there's some free copies by the front door there, and it's I think a really strong issue, strongest that we've done in a while, and I recommend taking a look at it. Well, I'm here today because Larry Orr, who was going to be our MC today, got ill, and I'm honored to be here taking his place. We're going to start the program as we do every year with an invocation from the Reverend David Cooper.
Well, it's good to see everybody out here again. If we keep on doing this, and maybe we will find peace in our time. So I want to start today with, I want to tell a story about a story that I heard a number of years ago, and I'm sorry I can't even source it. I tried to look for this, but it was one of those stories that once you hear it, it's just imprinted in your head. And it comes from the medieval ages time. And the story is when the wars in Europe were going on, probably theologically based, unfortunately, but when they would have to send the young men out of their villages, they would wait a while, of course, go ahead to do their duty, and then word came that the men were coming back, mostly boys, coming back to the village. And the village would then get together, get basins of water, get new clothing, and they would meet the young men coming back to the village some yards out before they came into the village, and thank them for having done this thing that they'd asked them to do, took off their blood-stained clothes, washed their bodies, put new clothing on, and welcomed them back into the village. We have yet to do that. We have yet to do that. So this business of injury, we know a lot about physical injuries and to a certain extent to traumatic injuries amongst our veterans. But there's another concept coming right now, and it's also parallel to what some of my old colleagues in the police field are still talking about, moral injury. There's the sense of doing something that you know deep down is wrong, and then having to deal with that for the rest of your life. So this Memorial Day, I remember one time somebody said, if we go out to war, let's really count exactly how much it's going to cost us in terms of the long-term care of the people that we're being sent, and the enmity in which it's going to cause to the countries where we've invaded and then have to leave. So there's a lot of wisdom within that. So I would like you to join me in a prayer today, just a very simple prayer, that we'd be able to find peace, that we'd be able to be taught about peace, and that we would have our steps guided in the way of peace. Let us pray. O Holy One, open our eyes and our hearts, and give us the courage to say, never again war. With war, everything is lost. Instill in our hearts the courage to take concrete steps to achieve peace. We ask this in your holy name. Amen. Thank you.
Well, again, this event is sponsored by the Madison chapter of Veterans for Peace, the Clarence Kalin chapter. And the spirit of Clarence Kalin guides us in all the work that we do here, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But before that, I want to read the statement of purpose of Veterans for Peace, Clarence Kalin chapter. We as military veterans do hereby affirm our greater responsibility to serve the cause of world peace. To this end, we will work with others both nationally and internationally to increase public awareness of the causes and costs of war, to restrain our governments from intervening overtly and covertly in the internal affairs of other nations, to resist racism and repression in our home communities, to oppose the militarization of law enforcement, to end the arms race and to reduce and eventually eliminate nuclear weapons, to seek justice for veterans and victims of war, and to abolish war as an instrument of national policy. To achieve these goals, members of Veterans for Peace pledge to use nonviolent means and to maintain an organization that is both democratic and open, with the understanding that all members are trusted to act in the best interests of the group for the larger purpose of world peace. Veterans for Peace chapter here in Madison meets regularly. They've got a brand new brochure, which is very, very nicely done, and on the back you'll find email address, phone number, website, so you can get more information about other events that are happening in and around town. And one of those events is coming up in September of this year, the Golden Rule, which was a sailboat that was originally sailed to bring an end to atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons in the 1950s. And it's been restored, and it's being sailed around the country now by members of Veterans for Peace. It's a 15-month, 11,000-mile voyage to inform and educate the public about the dangers of nuclear weapons proliferation. And the boat is going to be here in Milwaukee in September 1st through the 4th of this year. So you can get more information about that from a brochure back there on the table as well. Well, I want to speak about two people, actually. I want to first acknowledge David Giffey, longtime member of this chapter, in fact, co-founder of this chapter. And David wasn't able to be with us today, but there was a celebration of his work. You may not know this, but in addition to all of his work for peace, which is legendary, his work as a journalist, his work as a photographer, he's also a painter of icons in Greek Orthodox churches. And the Greek Orthodox Church had a wonderful dinner honoring him a week ago yesterday, and people got to see examples of all of the different work that David Giffey has done over the years, plus hear the stories of all his great contributions to our community. David is working on another mural right now, and so we want to send out words of thanks to David Giffey for all of his work for peace in our community in so many different ways. The other person we want to talk about is Clarence Kalin. Clarence Kalin, for whom this chapter is named, a veteran of the Spanish Civil War. Clarence, in 1936, went to Spain to fight fascism before it was popular. The veterans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, when they came back, were considered too radical. They were called premature anti-fascists. And Clarence continued his life working for peace and justice and against racism. In fact, one of the last things he was doing was gathering signatures on petitions against the war in Iraq and the U.S. occupation of that country. Clarence passed away in 2009, but we still honor his memory every year here. I was able to go to Spain with some of Clarence's ashes and scatter them on some of the battlefields that he was on in the 1930s. And I see that Clarence's daughter Julie is actually just joining us right now. Welcome. We had a celebration here at this very spot for Clarence's 90th birthday, I think it was. It's on videotape up on YouTube if you want to see it. And one of the things he said at the end, people asked him for a message, and he said, "We've got a lot of work to do." Well, that message of Clarence Kalin still continues to inspire us. We have so much work to do in building a more peaceful world, and we commemorate that here every year on Memorial Day, but hopefully all of you will take that into your hearts and use it in your life every day, the other 364 days of the year. We're going to hear again from Old Cool. They've got a couple of tunes for us. Old Cool has been regular musicians at these events for about 14 years or so now, and we always enjoy having them share their tunes. Even during the when we were precluded from in-person gatherings during COVID, we went and recorded Old Cool on videotape. Actually, Brian Alberth from Left Effect Media, who's up there in the balcony today, recorded them at their home playing outside, and we used that to commemorate this day in 2021. So, Old Cool.
So this is an old tune that we've done here many times, and I think people like this tune, so an old peace song called Down on the Riverside.
Study,
song, Red Wing. It's an old song, probably from Britain, I don't know, Scotland. Probably an old cavern song. But a lot of people have written words for it and used it. I'm thinking of the Union Maid. There you go. There's one where they put new words to it. So this is one that Art had put some words on. And so we're going to take care of this song. Are you in there? Oh, he needs glasses. No.
Even though he wrote the song, I still read it. That's what happens when you get to the RA.
Let's do a little mandolin first. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
In the summer sun, we and everyone celebrate our lives today and speak of peace and have our say together. We are a voice. We made a conscious choice to use this day to call for peace and peace around the world. Oh, my red wing, take them softly to their homes now, to their family. Oh, my red wing, hold them closely. Take them under the bright sun. Play on. This song is sung for every single one. People's homes across the sea, people just like you and me. Can't pretend that the stealthy bombs we send don't destroy their families just because we don't see them. And in those red wings, take them softly to their homes now, to their families. Oh, my red wing, take them closely, take them under the bright sun. Is done, and another night will come. We'll rest our weary bones and say, love the way we spent this day on the water's shore, demanding war no more, and other hearts will be set free, and peace will always be. Yes, it's red wing, take them softly to their home now, to their families. Oh, my red wing, hold them closely, dip them under the bright sun once more. Oh, my red wing, take them softly to their homes now, to their family. Oh, my red wing, hold them closer, take them under the bright sun.
Good afternoon. We are now going to honor the past members of Chapter 25 of Veterans for Peace by reading their names. Recent is what they say, but some of them are no longer so recent. We're getting a little bit older and whiter, and So, first and foremost, Clarence Kalin, Laurel Kalin, Joy Camarano, Jim Ellsworth, Sidney Podell, Dr. James Allen, Jeff Goldstein, Charles Sweet, Dr. Eugene Farley, Joel Galswick, John Ollinger, Ed Garvey, Don McKeating, William Mueller, Tom Kemble, Robert Judell, Robert Kimbrough, Roger Chapman, Lars Pripp, Dorothy Williams, Roger Garms, and to the list, we had the name of Judith Clare, who died in 2020. Judith was a friend and a loyal supporter of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade and Veterans for Peace.
So the local chapter, among other things that are done throughout the year, has a scholarship fund for young people to write essays about peace, and then there's a contest, and the winning essays receive a prize. And we have Paul McMahon to tell us about this year's essay contest.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? I know it was hard. Judy, can you hear me back there?
Not very well. Turn it up a little.
What do I do?
Just keep speaking, you know.
Just keep speaking, he says.
I bet you have to be really close to that mic.
Am I too close? Closer?
Kiss that.
That's good.
Kiss the mic.
Kiss the mic.
No, don't.
Who else has been here first, you know? This has been kind of heavy, you know, the statement of purpose and the past members. So, but when I look at this group, I say there's only, it's pretty bad, and most of the heads of hair around here are very seasoned and very, very experienced. But then when I look at the band, it's worse. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We do, as Norm mentioned, we do have a scholarship program. This started. We've lost our historian must have taken off someplace. We don't know. Around 2005, 2006, we established a scholarship named after Dr. James Allen. It was called the Peace Scholarship. And I want to do a shout out also to Dave Giffey, who started it really by funding some small scholarships out of his own pocket in some of the schools in the Spring Green area. And so we got the cue from David really, and decided that we would do a major scholarship that might enable someone to go to MATC, for example. They have enough to at least to cover the tuition for the first semester. And our whole purpose was don't choose to go in the military because you don't know what else to do. How about some money? Give it a shot. Anyway, I want to just say that David has always covered all of the rural schools. When I say rural, I mean as far as way down the river, Spring Green, Brule, that whole area, Boscobel, and covered a lot of miles, worked with local counselors, and always received a great number of essays. In fact, this year, even though he did it more or less virtually because of his not being able to drive all the time, I think he received 30 to 40 essays from that many students from 6 different schools. So he's done a terrific job every year, always. I just want to read, and what I do is I try to handle something at the Madison schools, but it's a whole different environment. The Peace Scholarship winners by school, most of these are all rural, Baraboo High School, Laisha Hallis. Richland Center, Grace Josem, or Yosem, I'm not sure. River Valley High School, Brooke Anderson. Two from Boscobel High School, Seth Gilson and Easton Carlin. And then from Dodgeville, 4, there were Julia Thompson, Anastasia Glonik, Layla Krull, and Olivia Olson, and also 4 from Wisconsin Heights High School who were given awards. Jacob Brabender, Emma Ray Kelscher, Jillian Statz, and Abigail Woodish. These names are very different than what I had in 4th grade, back then. Anyway, and then from Madison, we had a winning essay from La Follette High School from Emilio Gatica. So in total, we awarded $5,200 in scholarships. And since the beginning of the scholarship program, we've done something in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. Now, the applause should be for you, because if you weren't so generous in making contributions to Chapter 25, we wouldn't be able to allocate funds for these students to try to write something about why war is never the answer. So, thank you very much.
And speaking of donations, now is a particularly good time to mention this. Steve and Judy and maybe Paul can hand around these cans where we encourage you to reach deep into your pockets to support this important work. Again, not only the scholarship program, but all the work that's done by Chapter 25 throughout the year, events and anti-military counseling in the schools and so many other great projects. And as a friend of mine who used to do these fundraising pitches used to say, I don't want to hear any money falling in those cans. We want the nice soft money that doesn't make a sound as it goes in. Well, as the cans are circulating, I want to get ready to welcome our featured speaker for today's event. Matthew Rothschild is no stranger to the Madison community. He's been speaking at many of these events for so many years. Matt spent 30 years at the Progressive magazine, where he did everything that I'm currently doing and more for so many years. And then he started another career at the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, where he's been for a number of years and has just retired from that position. So I introduce now our featured speaker, Matt Rothschild, the past executive director of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign.
Hi, friends. It's nice to see everybody. It's great to see you all. It's great to be back here on Memorial Day. I'm reminded by Norm about my days at the Progressive and months and years at the Progressive, and an incredible article that Howard Zinn, a veteran himself, wrote for the Progressive about Memorial Day. And he said, yes, it is proper for all of us here in the United States to honor all the soldiers who fell in our wars, but we shouldn't fool ourselves. We shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that they died for our country. They didn't die for our country. Who did they die for? Howard Zinn tells us that they died for the politicians who sent them to war, often on a leash of lies. And they died for the armament companies who profit from the war and who are still profiting from this war. Look at the Ukraine war. $100 million the United States has spent on this war. Most of that going to U.S. armament companies. This war has got to stop. This Ukraine war has got to stop. It's a reckless game that Joe Biden is playing right now. It's a reckless game that NATO is playing right now. They are claiming that Putin is bluffing when he talks about using nuclear weapons. And so they're prepared to take that bet. And that bet is a crazy bet to make. The upside of the bet is not very high, continued stalemate between Ukraine and Russia. The downside of the bet is catastrophic, nuclear holocaust. And yet it's a bet that they keep making. Biden told us that he doesn't want to initiate World War III. He doesn't want a nuclear confrontation with Russia. And so he said he wasn't going to send tanks to Ukraine. And then he sent tanks to Ukraine. He said he wasn't going to send fighter jets to Ukraine. And then he sends fighter jets to Ukraine, arguing that, well, Putin said he was going to use nuclear weapons if we did this, that, and the other thing, and he hasn't done it when we sent tanks, so now we'll send jets. It's reckless. It's out of control. It's madness. And so we've got to stop this war. And we've got to do everything in our power to stop it. We've got to protest in the streets. We've got to contact our legislators. I believe that this war is not going to go on forever. I believe that saner heads will prevail. I think, as in many wars, the leaders of the nations at war will get tired of the war, or their soldiers, or the families of their soldiers will get tired of the war and angry about the war. Russia has lost a lot of soldiers. Ukraine has lost a lot of soldiers. It's time for peace negotiations to begin. China has a peace plan. South Africa has a peace plan. Brazil has a peace plan. The Pope has a peace plan. And still Biden and Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin keep saying to Ukraine, keep fighting, keep fighting. Why are they saying that? Well, they're beholden to the armaments companies for one. They want to explicitly, Lloyd Austin said this, we want to keep weakening Russia's military. But at what cost? And at what point does Putin say, you know, I've had enough, you've cornered me, I'm going to drop a nuclear bomb on Kyiv? No one knows the answer to that. They're willing to say he's not going to do it. I'm not willing to say that. I don't think any of us should be willing to say that. And you know, it's Memorial Day. We need to have memory. That's what Memorial Day is about. And we need to have some memory about what's going on in Ukraine. Yes, Putin is a war criminal. Yes, Putin invaded Ukraine with no legitimate reason for doing so. Yes, he violated international law. Yes, it's a war crime. Yes, he should be prosecuted for that war crime and the war crimes he's committed in engaging in this war. But it's a crazy thing in this country that our memory is so short and that we can be so indignant when another country does exactly what we've done. I mean, it was only 20 years ago that the United States invaded Iraq with no legal justification whatsoever. It was 20 years ago that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were committing war crimes in Iraq, or their soldiers were committing war crimes at Abu Ghraib and other places. And yet our politicians, and I'm afraid many of our fellow citizens, act as though we're pure as the driven snow and are on the moral high ground here when we say how horrible it is what Putin is doing. And it is horrible what he's doing, but we don't have a leg to stand on. We need to remember our own complicity and our own war crimes and never let those happen again. But we need to find a way to end this war. That's the crucial thing. And I'm hoping more and more voices are rising up. I know Code Pink has done a tremendous job. There are some former national security officials who've signed full-page ads saying it's time for negotiations. We really need to press this issue forward. And we need also to remember, or at least try to put ourselves in the shoes of the Russians to figure out what happened here. We need to remember, it being Memorial Day, that George H.W. Bush told the Russians that we weren't going to expand NATO to the borders of Russia when the Soviet Union collapsed. And ever since then, NATO has pushed, with the U.S. pushing it to the borders of Russia. So you can understand why Putin and many people in Russia think that this is a threat to them. And then when they see all the military aid that the United States is giving to Ukraine, and that Germany, of all people, is giving to Ukraine, imagine if you're a Russian how that feels. knowing your history. And so with some justification, Putin and many Russians believe this is just a proxy war between the United States and Russia. And they believe their existence is threatened. And that belief itself is dangerous and could lead Putin to wage nuclear war. That's the threat that is there. We're closer to nuclear war than we've been in many, many years, probably since 1963. And to play nuclear chicken is insanity. So we got to bring this war to an end. The other issue that really concerns me these days is fascism right here in the United States. You know, I didn't use the F word in public for most of my career. At the Progressive, I refused to use it when people would tell me that the United States is already a fascist country. I didn't think it was a fascist country then. I actually don't think we're a fascist country just yet, but we're a lot closer to being a fascist country. If we were a fascist country, you know, we'd all be rounded up, you know, as soon as the doors open, or the military or the police or the stormtroopers or the death squads would come crashing in and grab us all. We're not there yet, but we are a lot closer than we've ever been. There is a mass-based anti-democracy movement, you can call it a fascist movement, here in the United States, the likes of which we haven't seen at least since 20,000 pro-Nazi supporters gathered in Madison Square Garden in 1940 under huge Nazi flags. And what does this movement consist of, this anti-democracy movement, this fascist movement? Number one, it consists of the Trump cult. There are still tens of millions of Americans who believe Donald Trump is the greatest thing since the SOS pad. And there are also the white Christian nationalist movement. These are overlapping circles. But the white Christian nationalist movement is a very scary phenomenon. They don't want democracy. This white nationalist, the white Christian nationalists, the militants of the white nationalist movement, it's a mass base. You know, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. The media has done a great disservice in not telling us exactly who the Oath Keepers are and exactly who the Proud Boys are. They act as though they're just, you know, some white guys out in camouflage on the weekend playing with their guns. They're not. These people revel in mass slaughter. They fantasize about mass slaughter, about a authoritarian government that is going to kill lots of people. They wear shirts, the Proud Boys, that have the insignia 6MWE. 6 million wasn't enough. That Hitler didn't kill enough Jews in the Holocaust. That's what the Proud Boys wear. They wear shirts that say, Pinochet did nothing wrong. Now, you all know who Augusto Pinochet is. I don't have to tell you, but Pinochet's forces killed 7,000 or more, probably more. The death squads in Pinochet's forces tortured tens of thousands of people in addition to that. Proud Boys also wear T-shirts, and I just found this out, that this was a popular insignia of the Proud Boys when that latest Texas shooter, who had swastikas on his arms and also had an emblem that said RWDS. They said in the newspaper article, this is a very common insignia for the Proud Boys. RWDS stands for right-wing death squads. Right-wing death squads in Chile, in Pinochet's Chile, in Argentina, in Brazil, in Paraguay, in El Salvador, and Guatemala killed hundreds of thousands of people. They are revering, honoring, fantasizing about being a right-wing death squad and killing hundreds of thousands or millions of people. That's who they are. That's the white nationalist militant wing of the white nationalist movement. Another part of this anti-democracy movement is the irrationalists. There's such a high level of irrationalism in this society right now. It's hard to have a functioning democracy with this level of irrationalism. You know, they're the people who are the climate change deniers. They're the COVID deniers. They're the election 2020 deniers. There's Marjorie Taylor Greene that thinks members of my family sent lasers down from the skies. Rothschild, she said, in an anti-Semitic trope. And there are a lot of anti-Semitic tropes these days. Anti-Semitism is a part of this white nationalist movement. When they invoke George Soros constantly, Republicans are always talking about George Soros this, George Soros that. They're hitting the anti-Semitic patella reflex of anti-Semites all over the country. Of course, racism is a huge part, fundamental part of the white nationalist movement. And actually, Donald Trump has given a permission slip to every racist and anti-Semite and homophobe and sexist out there. And now they're scapegoating our friends in the trans community and scapegoating immigrants. Of course, Trump started his campaign, his first campaign, scapegoating Mexicans. And scapegoating is a fundamental part of a fascist movement. Ultranationalism is a fundamental part of a fascist movement. And what does Trump's cap and slogan, "Make America Great Again," mean except to appeal to people's sense of bereaved patriotism? And it is that appeal that has been foundational for every fascist: Hitler, Mussolini, Pinochet, Franco. And so we got to be very careful of invocations of patriotism on a day like Memorial Day, because patriotism can transform itself into a very toxic substance of nationalism. And so we need to watch out for that. There's also this right-wing media infrastructure that is assisting the white nationalist movement and the anti-democracy movement, the fascist movement, if you will, in this country. There are millions of people who are hooked up to right-wing media as if on an IV drip 24/7. And if that's all they're consuming, that's all they're believing. And it literally is garbage in and garbage out. And it's hard to even have conversations with people like that because they're in a separate media universe from the rest of us. So this anti-democracy movement is very frightening to me. I don't think we've seen anything quite like it in decades. It's got to be taken seriously. But I want to suggest that I think they're on their heels now. I think the fascist forces, the anti-democracy forces are on their heels. Why do I say that? Well, there's the Fox settlement with Dominion, and they're being sued again by another company. That's a plus. Tucker Carlson being fired is a plus. Tucker Carlson was the leading white nationalist in the mainstream media. The convictions, the recent convictions, with long sentences to the leaders of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, that's a plus. That's a good sign. And Donald Trump himself, the leader of the white nationalist movement, the leader of the anti-democracy movement, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys revere this guy. He's in a lot of trouble. I mean, he's not just because he got to pay off E. Jean Carroll for $5 million or more, not because of his shady business dealings in New York, and not even because of his terrible and blatant misuse of presidential papers down at Mar-a-Lago. But he's in trouble and needs to be prosecuted for his crimes against our democracy. The crimes that he committed after he lost the election, which as a pathological narcissist, and he will go down in the DSM-6, his picture will be in the DSM-6, the Diagnostic Manual of Psychiatric Disorders, under pathological narcissist. As a pathological narcissist, he could not admit defeat. And so he claimed that he had won, of course, contrary to all evidence. And for the first time in our history, we had a president who wouldn't agree to a peaceful transition of power. We had the false electors here in Wisconsin, who also should be prosecuted by Josh Kaul. I don't know where Josh Kaul's been all these days. But, please, send him an email and tell him to go after these false electors. I mean, they just broke the law here and tried to disenfranchise all of us here in Wisconsin, just 2 blocks away here. So he used the false electors. He tried to browbeat the vice president. He did all sorts of shenanigans in the courts. He did what, in Georgia, he said, just find me 11,780 votes. Why isn't that enough evidence for a conviction right there? And what's taken so long there? I mean, this guy needs to be prosecuted. Needs to be prosecuted for his crimes against democracy. For every time there's a season, this is the season for accountability. We desperately need accountability. And if and when Jack Smith and Merrick Garland get off their ass and finally indict Trump for his crimes against our democracy, that will have a healthy cleaning effect. Because while some of his supporters might scream and yell in the short term, Donald Trump being prosecuted for trying to destroy our democracy will send a signal that that behavior will never be countenanced again, and I believe the steam will go out of the movement. No one can rile up the mass base, the white nationalist base, the way Trump can. Yes, there are a lot of hideous other people trying to run for president on the Republican side, but none of them have that ability to really ignite the anti-democracy, pro-fascist forces that Trump does. So that's why I am relatively hopeful, more hopeful than I've been in a while, that we're going to get through this period that has been so dangerous to our imperfect democracy. I think we're going to survive it. If Trump wins the election, of course, all bets are off. And you can destroy any tape you're making of this speech. But I don't think he's going to win that election. And as far as the war goes, I just am hoping that saner heads will prevail at some point soon, because this is a game no one is going to win. So I say, as the title of my speech indicates, no to war, no to fascism. We've got to go out in the streets, defend our democracy, defend peace, stop the military-industrial complex, and start having a more sane and beautiful democracy than the one we have right now. Thanks very much.
Matt Rothschild, thank you so much. Let's hear again from our friends in Old Cool.
Thank you, Matt.
You are on.
We are on.
Coming out of speech. Yeah, nothing's a check.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Oh, there, maybe.
Oh, there we are.
All right, now we're
So, well, Matt, your speech kind of leads right into this song. It's called "Waiting for the Times to Get Better." I've been wrecking my brain, hoping to find a way out. I've had enough of this continual rain. Changes are coming, no doubt. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. You seem to want from me what I cannot give. Feel so lonesome at times. I have a dream that I wish I could live, but it's burning holes in my mind. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. changes are coming, no doubt. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind, and I'm ready for the times to get better.
Up here with this little tune that we do at the end of every session here. So I'm a pilgrim. And we got a mandolin here that's going to start us up. We think. I am a pilgrim and a stranger, traveling through this wearisome land. I've got a home in yonder city, good Lord, as not paid by hand. I've got a mother, I got a sister and a brother who have been this way before. I'm gonna go there and go and see them over on that other shore. I am a pilgrim and a stranger, traveling through this wearisome land. I got a home in yonder city, good Lord, and it's not made by hand. I'm going down to the river of Jordan just to bathe my wearisome soul. I could just touch the hem of his
a pilgrim and a stranger traveling through this wearisome land. I've got a home, I got a city, good Lord, and it's not made by hand, and you know it's not made by hand.
Thank you very much, Old Cool. So if John Nichols were up at the microphone right now, he'd start introducing everybody in the audience. And I know most of you, and I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. But I do want to introduce one person I just saw come in, Mike Boehm, who's in the back. Mike has been tirelessly working to bring direct support to the people of My Lai for more than 30 years with Madison Quakers Incorporated. And over the last several months, he's been hand building a kayak out of recycled redwood siding. The kayak is done. I saw it in the water the other day. And Mike is about to paddle the kayak down the Mississippi River, 2,500 plus miles from Lake Itasca all the way down to the other end. And that's to raise money for projects in Vietnam. So check out the Facebook page. Check out the website, mqivietnam.org, and say hello to Mike before the afternoon is over. Speaking of this afternoon, I want to give you a quick rundown on what happens next, which is we're going to have some final words from Will Williams in just a moment. And then, as we do every year, we're going to ask people to grab a rose from, or carnation, excuse me, a red flower, a carnation, from right by the door there, and take it over to the memorial to the Wisconsin veterans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. It has on it, it was organized and created by Clarence Kalin. It has the names of all of the Wisconsin people who served in the Abraham Lincoln Brigade in the 1930s, and it's wonderfully preserved and protected by the city of Madison now. In fact, there was an incident right after Donald Trump was elected when that was graffitied with swastikas, and almost immediately the city crews were there cleaning it off and restoring it. So it's really a wonderful place to have it located right here at such a prominent location. It's had many national and international visitors who have come to see it. I remember Alexander Coburn came to see it one time. And so we're going to take these carnations out there and lay them by the monument. And by the way, as Darrell mentioned earlier, Judith Clare, who's no longer with us, for years and years kept flowers by that monument all year round and dusted the leaves off of it and so on. So we're also going to have accompaniment on the bagpipes from Sean Michael Dargan, who plays the bagpipes for us every year. Hopefully he'll be here. We're finishing a tiny bit early right now, so hopefully he'll get here in time for us to march out to the monument. But before all of that, I want to thank everybody for coming out today, and also want to thank Brian Alberth and Left Effect Media, who's videotaping this, and we're going to put it up on YouTube so that you can share it with your friends and family and even people you don't know who weren't able to make it today. So thanks very much, Brian. Thanks to all the members of Chapter 25, the Clarence Kalin chapter of Madison Veterans for Peace. And let's give a welcome to Will Williams.
Good evening. It's great to be here. After the words from Chief Cooper, Matt, and Norm, all I have to say is, be like Porky Pig. That's all, folks. But there's a few things I want to say, and it starts with my childhood, growing up in Jim Crow, Mississippi in 1943 when I was born. It was some words that were stamped in my brain and has been there since. And it's called the Declaration of Independence. You know, we read those words, but I think many times people don't fully understand them or follow them. And I've even said they weren't true because of what was happening during the time I was growing up. Those words say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, gaining their just power from the governed. And if any form of government is destructive of this ends, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish it. We haven't done that, even though times have come when we should have. We're at that point now. I feel that nothing will change unless we, the people, change it. That's why years ago, when I was questioned by someone about the greatest generation, they asked me if I believed it. I said, I believe there are great people in all generations, but the greatest generation is yet to come. The greatest generation will come from the people that receive these scholarships, that understand the bullshit that our government teaches us at a young age. That false idea of patriotism, what it takes to be patriotic. To be patriotic is to try to change your government when it's on the wrong path. And I think that time will come when young people will know, when they get woke. We talk about wokeness now. Too many have been asleep for most of their lives and don't really understand what's going on in the world, what makes this world turn. But I believe that love is the ingredient that's missing. If we loved our fellow man, we wouldn't be so apt to be violent against him. So as long as we accept a country that settles its differences through the means of violence, we'll forever be having a day that's supposed to be set aside to honor those who gave their lives. Which if you look around, you'll see that many people don't celebrate that day or honor that day for what it is. To them, it's a day for barbecuing, for camping, for having an outing or something. So we've got to get real about this. I think times are worse now, or just as bad, or going back to what they were when I was growing up. When you look at what's happening in politics, when statues that have been on the record are things that we've had for years are gone. They're being appealed. I think back to 2010 when Governor Walker was in, when he took the rights of people to have unions, something that started here in Wisconsin. When you look at the two parties that's in power, the Republican Party, Abraham Lincoln Republican Party, that started in Ripon, Wisconsin, does not even have a semblance of what it was then and what it is now. What we have now are a bunch of extremists within a party. We have a party that have stacked the courts at every level where those in power could get what they want. A court where the highest court in the land does not have to have any ethics at all. They can do what they want to do and yet not be challenged or held accountable. And that is ridiculous for something like that to be happening in this great country, a country that I believe is great, that would have been greater had not the people that immigrated here annihilated the Native Americans instead of assimilating. So that tells you a story there. White power is not something that just started white nationalism. It started long, long ago when people couldn't accept people for what they were. So, as Clarence Kalin said, we have a lot of work to do. But I am not as optimistic as some people that believe that within the policies of the politician will change things. I don't believe that. I believe that the young people are the only ones who will change it, because as they learn, they will unite. They will have solidarity, and they will do what needs to be done to turn America around. I believe it was Woodrow Wilson who said, all nations have the right to self-determination. When we in this country have not practiced giving people those rights, we've devastated areas all over the world, mostly in the South and Latin Americas, where we've invaded. And yet, when you see people trying to come here to have a better life, we say they leave it. They're thieves. They're crooks. But have you ever wondered how devastated the countries were that America went and invaded? That those people's land is not as it was before America set a footprint in it. Where in places they can't grow their own crops because of the chemicals that have been put in the land. But yet we cry when we talk about people coming from the southern borders. They're coming here because we destroyed their countries. So we do have a lot of work to do. We have to continue the struggle, and it is a struggle. Sometimes it seems like it's eternal, and it will be. But I'm hoping that the young people will be the one that will take the power from those that will not surrender it. So we got work to do, people. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Will Williams. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to the Madison Chapter 25, the Clarence Kalin Chapter of Veterans for Peace, for doing this event every year. And please, on your way out, grab a carnation, take it to the monument, and don't forget, if you haven't done it yet, make sure to throw something in the donation bucket for the scholarship fund and all the other work of the chapter here in Madison. Thank you.